What's going on, Los Angeles? Good evening, Dyrud. After dark here. Thanks for bearing with me. Was trying to, obviously we always do the show at 5 o'clock on Monday, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm setting something up here that wasn't right when I hit record. But anyway, so hopefully everyone out there can hear me fine. But yeah, we're excited to get into this game, this Rams game. We're going to talk a little bit of Chargers free agency and then get into a little bit of USC and UCLA transfers because they've been busy, even though it's the off season. So, bear with me one second. I just want to make sure that audio is all good here. Cool. Sounds good. So, but yeah, thank you all those that are tuning in. Little Dyrud After Dark. So, this is the LA Football Show. For those that don't know me, I am Ryan Dyrud, your host. Always have a slew of guests on. Tonight it will just be myself, but we have a lot of fun stuff to get into. This Rams game, man. If you joined me yesterday, I did an immediate reaction after the game, so I apologize if I do repeat anything. Because I'm going to, talk a little bit. I'll briefly mention a few things I talked about, but I do have some different stuff I want to get into and dive into a little bit, more in depth of the game. Because what a game it was, as our Rams are, now hosting an NFC Championship game. This is what was supposed to happen, right? Like when the Rams went out and got all these guys, got Matthew Stafford, traded for Von Miller, signed Odell Beckham Jr. I know every year since McVay's been here, the goal's been a Super Bowl, but it's like now you go those moves and it's like, okay, the expectation is the Super Bowl, not the hope, not the desire, not the, we should be good enough. It's, it needs to be. And I think they've reached this point where, and we'll get into the San Francisco game during the week, Wednesday and Friday for sure. But I think, in my opinion, love to hear any of you guys out there listening if you want to get shout out or give your opinion. In my opinion, though, reaching the NFC Championship game to me is a success. And, at the end of the day, it's all about winning, right? It's all about winning the Super Bowl, or, Ricky Bobby says it best. You're not first, you're last. But I think the first year getting these guys together, Matthew Stafford's first year in the system, Odell Beckham Jr., hopefully we can re-sign him, but his first half season in the system, Von Miller, we'll see if we can re-sign him his first half year. Reaching the NFC Championship game is at least we reached that where we should. That was, I think, the minimum was the NFC Championship game. The minimum. Now, I think this team is good enough, and we'll get into it. And I think this was my Super Bowl pick, not being a homer. My pick preseason was Rams Bills. Bills let me down last night. That was a wild game. If anyone watched that Chiefs Bill game, both games are wild. But yeah, a lot to get into. So, show brought to you. If you guys are going to the game Sunday or want to go to the game Sunday, I know there's a ton of awesome people in the Ramley on Rams Twitter that are connecting people that are selling tickets, because obviously we want this to be a loud, proud, Rams-filled fan base at SoFi home game. And I hate that they even have to talk about it with the Niners. It's annoying to keep talking about it, but until we, outnumber them, obviously it's going to be a topic of interest among national media and among the fan base. I mean, we need to fill it out. So I'll say this one last time, because I'm sure many of you have heard me say it before. I don't think it's fair, the narrative that's out there fully, when it comes to specifically Rams. Now, I mean, Rams have done phenomenal since being in LA. I mean, the fact, if anyone out there is saying there's not a big fan base, they just don't know what they're talking about, and they just read ESPN or something. Who ESPN, put the Chargers in the NFC Championship game. If anyone saw that app update, they had the Niners and the Chargers facing. So ESPN's doing their own thing. They're doing their own drinking. At least we stick to like the good stuff here. By good stuff, I mean Jim Beam. But here in LA, and again, I've said this before, so I'm going to say this one more time and then be done with it. In LA, the Rams left in the mid-90s. The Raiders left then as well. And there was no team here for 20-plus years. some people stuck with the Rams, but like when any team moves, there's definitely some contention, some heartbreak, some disloyalty. So that happened. And then you just have fans that were finding a new team. Like, I don't want to get into all the, we could talk history and all this and, what went down in LA and all that stuff. But essentially 20 years, no team here. The pseudo home teams in LA became the Niners, the Raiders, and the Cowboys. Just the way it was. Broncos have a really big following here as well. Niners and Raiders were, Raiders were in LA, obviously. And when they moved, not a lot of fans. I mean, it's the culture they built. That's a whole different saga. But they also were still in California. And the Niners, they're in California as well. And they were really, really good. Won 5 Super Bowls. Joe Montana, Steve Young, Bill Walsh. Like, they were an easy team to get behind. They were an easy team that if you didn't have a team to say, yeah, I want to root for a winner. And they're in California, my state. So for 20 plus years, those were the home teams. When I moved here in 2008 to go to Long Beach State, I obviously had some friends that also moved down here from different areas, but the majority of everyone that went to Long Beach State back then, now it's a little different. But back in 2008, it was a huge commuter school. I mean, it was probably 90% kids that lived within the LA area. And not just within Long Beach State, but, I met people, at UCLA, USC, Loyola Marymount, everywhere we'd go. I obviously was a diehard football fan. The fans that I knew when I was in college, the majority were Niner fans, knew a couple Raider fans, and then anyone that moved up to go to school from San Diego were Charger fans. So the only Charger fans were the ones that were from San Diego that had moved up to LA to go to college. And then obviously I knew a couple Cowboy fans, but the majority were Niner fans. Like my roommates when I was in college were like I think I had 1 Raider fan and 4 Niner fans, and then me. Yeah, I lived with like 6 guys. And that's just the way it was because there was no teams here. So then the Rams come back in 2016, Chargers in 2017, and they not only have to kind of rebuild, but they're fully creating a new dynamic with a new young fan base. And that's going to take time. You weren't just going to have all these people 20 years of rooting for we'll just talk Niners specifically, 20 years being Niner fans saying like, oh, we have a team now. Oh, and it happens to be a rival in our division. Yeah, I'll just jump becomes a Rams fans because they're here in LA. No, that's not going to happen. So you had the old time Rams fans, the Melonheads, the group that was diehard fans back when, they were at the Collie, but then they went to Angel Stadium, but, they saw Deacon Jones and all the Jack Youngblood and all the greats of those era. They came back. I mean, I think were most of them, like my brother-in-law specifically, he has a tattoo of the Rams. Like he remained a Rams fan, but he became diehard again, became a season ticket holder again. So you have that older generation. And then you now have this new young generation, but they're not, 14, 15, 16. They're not buying season tickets. So they've built a fan base very, very quickly here in LA. But you don't just supplant a fan base that was here for 20 years. And that's what the Niners were. So long way of me saying that narrative, it just doesn't get talked about like that. Like it basically says, wow, the Niners own LA. The Rams don't have a big fan base, or I saw some people today saying the Rams didn't even want to buy the tickets for this game. Rams fans didn't. I mean, that's just not true. It's just a load of bull. You also have ticket brokers. SoFi is a very nice destination. People buy the PSLs, or is it PSLs. It gives them access to other events. So then they get first dibs. They get tickets for this game that they can then resell. So it's just a craziness. But anyway, all that being said, if you need tickets to games, tons of people on Twitter, hit me up. I can point you in the right direction at Ryan Dyrud LAFB. Would love to point you into Rams fans that are selling tickets. You can just buy them straight from them direct. If you do need to go third party, got to go through TickPick. That's our partner. TickPick.com/LAFB. No fees. I know prices are expensive right now, but it's the NFC Championship game. It's LA. I mean, if the Dodgers are in the World Series, those tickets are $200, $300, and they play a 7-game series. This is one game. It's going to be more expensive. So if the Lakers are in the, Western Conference Finals, those are hot tickets. Those are $300, $400. No different here. You have one game. So hopefully everyone will pack that place. I will certainly pack it, but hopefully it's packed with just Rams fans. Because I know how great this fan base is. Doesn't get enough credit, but the Rams fan base is a phenomenal fan base. So if you want to go to the game, you need tickets, hit me up. At the very least, I can point you the direction of TickPick. Like I said, .com/LAFB. There's no fees, so at least the price you see is the price you get. Or we can hit up people on Twitter. I know a bunch of people that are, doing the rounds, making sure tickets get in the right hands, and they end up maybe not having to go to third party because then you don't have say who buys them. We can just directly connect Rams fans and get that place rocking. So looking forward to it. Hit me up. Ryan Dyrud, LAFB. But yeah, we'll get actually into that game all week long. But tonight we got to talk about yesterday. And this Rams win 30-27. It was a roller coaster, man. It was a roller coaster. Anyone out there watching, drop a comment like what your emotions were throughout this game. Jump out to a huge early lead, 20-3 at one point, 27-3 at one point, excuse me. And then it's just like they did, everything they could to give the game to the Buccaneers, to Tom Brady. And you have all game long. He's announced. I talked about this on my reaction yesterday, so I'm going to mention it again. So if you were here, you'll recognize this. But Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth calling the game. I stay out of talking about broadcast. I think overall, the broadcasters do a really good job. It's a hard job to do. I know Chris Collinsworth, is a mixed bag among fan bases, but overall, I think he does okay. I'm not a fan of. I hate when he calls Mahomes games and Brady games, just because there's so much bias and obvious. And yesterday, oh my gosh, it was the most. I think it's overblown a lot. Fans saying like, man, these announcers just hate our team, but it was pretty obvious yesterday. Not hate, but it was pretty clear who. Maybe not Al Michaels as much, but for sure Chris Collinsworth, who he was rooting for in this one. Like, geez, anything the Rams did great, you barely got a peep out of him, or he'd move on to the next play. As soon as the Bucs and Tom Brady did something, it was like he just fallen over himself. Ridiculous. I talked about it yesterday, but Matthew Stafford had a pass in the first, I think it was the first drive. Evades pressure in the pocket, steps to his side, goes sidearmed and throws it literally wraps it on. I don't know if you remember that movie. Angelina Jolie was in, I can't remember the title of it, but it's basically they whip bullets. They use their guns, the way they tweak them, and they can bend bullets around corners. Stafford basically did that with the football to OBJ. It was it was a short slant route, but ended up being a first down, a nice gain. Not even a comment on it. They moved on. If Mahomes did that and Chris Collinsworth was calling the game, holy cow. You would think they just invented some new something. Invented Wi-Fi. Jeez. But anyway, didn't matter. Rams took care of business. And, I don't need to recap the game because I did that a lot yesterday. So I want to get into a couple things. First, I want to talk strictly about Matthew Stafford because this guy deserves all the credit in the world, man. I mean, what he's had to put up with this year and it's hard to say it like that because, these are big boys. He was acquired for a lot, 2 first-round picks and a third, and a former first-round overall pick, Jared Goff. He's making $20+ million a year. These are big boys. These are professionals. They can take some criticism, but he was always any slip up. And this wasn't just with fans. This is with media, everything. Any slip up, and it was still questioning. Did the Rams make the right choice? Did they overpay? Was it worth it? Is this any better than what Jared Goff could do? All year long. Especially that 3-game losing streak. Holy cow. They were losing their minds. Basically, they wanted to trade him back. And, he had some poor games. Had some poor outings, I would say. Wasn't a perfect season. Overall, I think it was a really good season. Finished third total in yards, 41 touchdowns. Did have the 17 picks, but that's been his whole career. He's always in that range at that 11, 12, 13 to 16. It seems to always be his kind of range. But he comes out against Arizona, plays a very efficient game, 13 for 17, over 200 yards, 3 total touchdowns, no turnovers. Very efficient. No one gave him much credit. You know, it's kind of like, well, the defense played really good. Cardinals offense could do nothing. Rams ran the ball well. Cam Akers is back. I'm not downplaying Cam Akers, but that was kind of the storylines. Stafford was like, yeah, great. Got his first win, but we didn't really need him. Most quarterbacks would have won that game the way the team played. That's not incorrect, but, he didn't get really much credit. Then they come into this game, jump out to a 27-3 lead. Dude's playing flawless. Then the Rams start turning the ball over. And not Stafford, though. Cooper Kupp with a fumble, which has he ever fumbled? I can't remember. Can't remember the last time he fumbled in the NFL. Cam Akers loses 2 fumbles. Had only 1 fumble prior to that his whole NFL career. 1 last season, none this year. Obviously didn't play any this year until the last game of the season. I don't know the exact numbers. I tried looking it up, but I couldn't totally find it. But I don't think he really had a fumbling issue in college. That was never a thing. So just kind of a rarity there. A guy that really hasn't had much contact for the last 7 months. So unfortunately, it's not unexpected. You have the botched snap from Brian Allen. Like, say what you want about Brian Allen all year. It's been kind of up and down. I think overall he's been a good center. Had some poor outings, but overall been good. But the center to quarterback exchange has never been an issue once. Not one time. Not one shotgun muff snap. Not one bobbled under center snap. Not one. And then in a key moment in a playoff game against Tom Brady and the Bucs, you flip 120 yards over your quarterback's head. It's almost like the gods, the football gods out there were doing whatever they could to make Tom Brady win this game. And this was a point I made yesterday, just diverting a little bit from talking Stafford. There needs to be more talk about Brady losing that game. Because the talk will be, and I even saw it this morning, and I predicted it yesterday, and of course, all the morning debate shows, this is what they talked about. The talk was, did the Rams win or did they not lose? Kind of like basically, like they didn't really, like they didn't do a whole lot to prove that they were the better team in a sense. I don't know. I'm not saying that correctly now, but and my thing was that the storyline needs to be, the Rams won. Yes, they won the game. They had some letdowns. But B, Tom Brady lost that game. Like, he was gifted 4 turnovers and still lost. 2 of which inside the 25-yard line. The third one over the 50-yard line in his own end. And the fourth one was, right before half at the 1. Rams didn't get points. They would have had points on it. So he was given 3 turnovers and still lost. That should be a storyline, in my opinion. I'm not trying to be hating, but the guy gets credit for everything, as he should. Tom Brady, the best ever. 7 Super Bowl wins. But when you're given that and you still can't win, and the Rams gave away that and still won, that shows you're a special team to me. If you overcome 4 turnovers and beat the greatest quarterback of all time, like, come on. Something needs to be said for that. I know in the moment it didn't feel that way. Like, fans watching are like, we don't deserve to win this game. Like, what are we doing? And I felt the same way. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, what is happening? But when you step back and look and you say, wow, we gave that game, or we gave the best QB of all time every opportunity, and we still won. There's some destiny there. There's some fate there. And now they get to go play their arch rival they haven't beaten in 6 tries to go to the Super Bowl. But Matthew Stafford needs to be given all the credit. And it sucks because for him, the very next game, we had the Mahomes-Allen showdown at Arrowhead, which was maybe one of the greatest quarterback duels ever. Not just in playoff history, but ever. I mean, that was insane, especially that last 2 minutes plus overtime. So that overshadowed Stafford's performance. But the dude, I mean, he finished 28 of 38. So that's great completion percentage, 366 yards and 2 touchdowns. Literally no blemishes. Had the one pass on the second drive, I believe, that could have been intercepted in the end zone, but it wasn't. That was probably his literally only bad play. And obviously, they scored later on. So, my question now, and what I kind of want to get into very, very quickly, or not very, very quickly, but not very, very briefly, is now with these 2 playoff wins, not looking ahead to a Super Bowl or even the NFC Championship game, just now where he sits, where does Matthew Stafford rank among NFL quarterbacks? And we'll do this again once the Rams win the Super Bowl. Let's put that into existence. Then I think this conversation will jump up even more. I want to throw some numbers out at you, just kind of show where he sits. I think Stafford's always been known as a talented guy, great arm talent. Didn't have the most help in Detroit, but kind of it's left at that. He's always not talked about a lot through the year. Part of that's literally just because he played for Detroit. But he's always just been a talented guy, puts up good numbers. But I don't think anyone has ever considered him one of the best in the league. No one's considered him one of the best all time. But when you really look at it, where should he rank? So right now, he's 12th in total yards with 49,995 and 12th in touchdowns with 323. The 11 players in front of him, there's only 3 without a Super Bowl ring. Phillip Rivers, Dan Marino, and Matt Ryan. So those are the 3 QBs ahead of him, and I think he'll end up passing all 3. I mean, Matt Ryan's still playing, but he's not, I don't think, putting up the numbers he did early in his career anymore. He's quite a bit older. So, what up, Payo Time? How you doing, man? So, he'll, I think, eventually pass all 3. Marino, he's about, what is he, 7,000 or so off his pace. I mean, he's fairly close to him. Is Marino at 69,000? Maybe he's 20,000 off. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But anyway, so the only 3 in front of him without a win are those 3. Those guys, as it stands right now, Phillip Rivers, 5-7 playoff record. Dan Marino, 8-10 playoff record. Matt Ryan, currently 4-6 playoff record. Does have the Super Bowl appearance, but didn't obviously win. We know what happened in that game. So Matt Stafford now is 2-3 playoff record currently. They win out. He'll finish 4-3 with a Super Bowl win. So where legitimately do you think he ranks all time? Obviously, they're a guy you can't just base rankings on just total yards. You have guys like Joe Montana, who's outside of the top 12, which obviously he's one of the best all time. All these Johnny Unitas. I think Warren Moon's never been given a ton of credit, but what he was able to do with the football, how talented he was, is up there. A lot of different guys. So it's an argument you really have to spend a lot of time. Maybe in the offseason, we will really get into that topic. But I think it's worth actually saying, is he a top 12-ish QB of all time? Especially if he gets that ring. If he gets that ring, he probably skyrockets up. Especially in his first year with this great Rams team. Because then we can put all that to bed. Because it was, there's the side that said, played in Detroit, didn't really have the talent, played for a dysfunctional organization, wasn't his fault. You have the side saying, well, great quarterbacks make the organization functioning. They make the players around them better. They carry them up to a level. And there's a degree, absolutely. You could look at John Elway early in his career, before Pat Bowlen bought the Broncos. Wasn't a very great organization. He carried some. You look at some of those 3 Super Bowl teams that Elway went with. I would press anyone out there that's not a diehard Bronc fan to name anyone else on those teams. And Elway went to 3 Super Bowls with those. So guys like Elway were able to totally elevate. Stafford's not on Elway's level. I don't think anyone would ever argue that. But there are other quarterbacks that are in the great category that have had great circumstance. I mean, the greatest of all time, Tom Brady. He's had pretty damn good circumstance his whole career. I'm not arguing he's not the best. But he's had a Hall of Fame coach. He's had top 10 defenses almost every single year. He's had really good role players. He's had, obviously Gronkowski. He's had phenomenal offensive lines. So now seeing Stafford, if he can get that over the hump in his first year, and the dude's still 33. The dude can still play for 7 years, potentially. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's actually worth a conversation now that he finally got that playoff win, so we can get that out of there. It's got 2 now, 1 against the GOAT in Tampa. And if we can keep this rolling, there's a real conversation about Matthew Stafford ranking quite high in all-time greats. All right, I got 3 game balls to give out. Before I do, though, Payo time, let's get to your question here. Any thought on what the Hendo, Michelle, Akers backfield looks like? Cool to have them all there possibly next week. Great question. I really want to dive in this more, too, later in the week. But this is, I think, what Sean McVay and us fans truly wanted to see from the running back room. Obviously, Sony Michel wasn't there to begin the season. But the idea was Cam Akers is your lead back. Darrell Henderson is a change of pace complementary back. And when he can do that, that's when Darrell Henderson is so dynamic. I've said many times, he's not built or made to be an every down back. He's not made to be the lead guy. He was never at Memphis. He wasn't made to be when he's drafted in the 3rd round. So if he can now be truly in that complementary role, and with Sony Michel now to that layer, where you have your ground and pound power back, Cam Akers is pretty powerful too. Man, you have a really dynamic 3-headed monster that Darrell Henderson, especially coming off injury, I mean, we don't know how healthy he can be if he does play, but you may only want to give him 4 to 5 touches, if that. But those 4 touches could end up going for a dynamic 10, 15, even break one. Because you're not wearing him down all game long, which we've seen over his 3 years now at the Rams, that he just can't sustain that. He can't sustain 20 carries a game. Give him 3. You can get 3 carries, average 10, 15 yards a clip. What more can you ask for? Then you go back to Cam Akers, who can do it all. You ground it. If you need a 3rd and 1, you put Sony Michel in to pound it. Like, you have a phenomenal 3-headed monster. So I'll get into it more, pay you time throughout the week, but I think we'll see a fun, if he's able to go. We haven't heard it for sure, but if he is able to go, I wouldn't expect to see a ton of him, but definitely those few carries could be utilized the way they, intended in the preseason. And if before anyone asks, Cam Akers fumbling thing, I don't think that will have any effect on his playing time. He's still your lead guy. He's still going to be your 20 touch plus guy as long as he's healthy. It's a guy that just needs those bodies, right? Needs that physicalness to come up against him. So, I didn't even see you said this. So speaking of, Hope Akers got his fumbles out of the way of the system last week. Need him to be clean against the Niners. Yeah, I think we'll be fine. I think I talked probably before you were in here, but it doesn't have a history of fumbling. Had 1 last year as a rookie. Not really an issue during his time at Florida State. So it's a guy that hasn't been playing football for 7 months. So once you start getting knocked around a little bit, big arms like Ndamukong Suh and whatnot. The other first one was just him diving kind of for the pylon and didn't have full control as he's like kind of, head over body. So I think we'll be fine there. And obviously McVay has trust in him. So 3 game balls I have for the Rams. 3 game balls. First, I think everyone can probably guess who these 3 are. Pretty easy. Cooper Kupp. What can the guy not do? The dude is just clutch. He's great. He needs to be the MVP, but he won't be, but he should be. Special player. 9 receptions, 183 yards, and a touchdown. But when it mattered most, when you had to have it, with 46 seconds on the clock, 2 big time route perfection catch. Gets out of bounds on the first one. Hauls it in on the deep one that sets up the game-winning field goal. It's the highest graded Rams offensive player, 86.4 by PFF. Technically Kendall Bland, but he only had 8 snaps. So Cooper Kupp was the highest. The dude is just he's so fun to watch, so special. He's just great. It's one of those players you're just like, man, I'm happy he's a Ram. You got to just sit back and just be thankful, right? Like everyone wants to compare, and is he better than Devontae Adams? Is he better than Deebo Samuel? Is he better than Justin Jefferson? I'm just damn happy he's a Ram, right? I think that's what you have to sit back and say. Everyone has a little different skill set. Everyone can do a little things different. Everyone is a little better at one thing than the other. But Cooper Kupp is just so well-rounded, so smart, so cerebral, great hands, just a gamer when you have to have it. That last route they were talking about, and his was basically just a go route, a seam route, a little wiggle seam route. And it was basically they figured out it was a cover 0 blitz that was coming in. But the thought was if the safety trailed off, then you hit one of your out or your dig routes with OBJ or Van Jefferson out route, and then hopefully you get enough yards, or you can get down there, spike it really fast, maybe get one more play to set up a long field goal. But they cover 0 blitz, safety, didn't come over. All of a sudden, Coop's wide open. Matthew Stafford's got a guy bearing up the middle and on his nickel side, and steps into it, takes the hit. No one talks about the hit he took. Boom. Hits a dime. Cooper Kupp hauls it in. Burned his, I think it was, who was it? It was covering him. I can't remember who was covering, but burns his guy and sets up the game-winning field goal. So, yeah, exactly. Kupp breaking down the route after the game, humblest way possible. Yeah, that's how, even when he gets up, obviously that's the moment where they needed the clock to stop, but, gets up, gets smart enough to give the ball to the ref, not go put it down himself, finds the ref, gives it to him. They get set up, get the spike. Stafford's pumped. He goes to Kupp, and literally you see Kupp, and you're just like, all right, yeah, that's what I was supposed to do. Like, they're not pointing or doing first down stuff or taunting or giving peace signs or whatever, like Tyreek Hill. Got a lot of hate from Chiefs fans for calling him out, I guess. Yeah, it's great. So game ball 1, Cooper Kupp. Game ball 2, yeah, Matthew Stafford. Talked about him all in the beginning of the show, how much he deserves, how much respect he's earned. Just gamer. I mean, everyone talks about Tom Brady being, who you want to have ball in someone's hands in the final minute of the game is Brady. But then Matthew Stafford, 46 seconds, has 3 plays, one of which was a bizarre QB dive / sack, and they still get down and kick the game-winning field goal. So Matt Stafford, hats off to him. And lastly, Pat, you were close. I mean, well, you technically said all 4, but I'm going to go with Von Miller. Noteboom had a great game too. I mean, and playing instead of Andrew Whitworth had a phenomenal game. He had a finished with a, let me find here what his grade was. Finished with a 71 grade, 6th overall, but I think that doesn't tell the whole story. I think he played very well. But Von Miller came in with a 93.8 overall grade, 10 total pressures, sack, forced fumble, and recovered the fumble himself. This is why they went out and traded for Von Miller. Was for these instances. Yeah, you want him in the regular season. Obviously, you're trying to win the division. You're trying to become that number 1 seed. He's going to help out. But you get him for these playoff runs because the last time he was in the playoffs, won Super Bowl MVP and was the best player on the field by far. And Peyton Manning was one of those other players on that team. And Von Miller was far and away the best. DeMarcus Ware was also on that team. Aqib Talib was on that team. Chris Harris Jr. was on that team. Demaryius Thomas was on that team. Emmanuel Sanders on that. Von Miller, far and away the best. And last night, not far and away, because Aaron Donald was great too. But he was the best player on defense. Aaron Donald had 8 pressures for those wondering. Von Miller had 10. Had the sack, had the forced fumble. So, yeah, that's why you go out and trade for a guy like that, is for these moments, for these playoffs. And now going up against the Niners, they're banged up. Their starting tackle is banged up. So, yeah, Von Miller's going to come out and ball out. So those are my 3 game balls. Before I move on to another topic, let me get these last questions in here. Did I see the no, I don't halftime show trailer. So obviously you're referring to, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, I think Eminem, like all the guys performing at halftime, I'm assuming. I didn't see the trailer now. I'm sure it was hype. It's going to be a sweet halftime show. I mean, I love it because it's LA. I know lately they've been trying to do that more where the halftime show, like when it was in Minnesota, they had that tribute to, Justin Timberlake did the tribute there to, why am I freaking Purple Rain? I'm drawing a blank on his Prince. There we go. Jeez. So they're trying to like involve more of like historic artists from that region. So LA, we got some good ones, right? So I think that'll be awesome. But no, I didn't see it. I'll have to look it up. Didn't see it. I'm not even going to try to say, what is this? Perverse? I don't know what the name is, but thanks for the comments. Thanks for tuning in. Thoughts on 49er fans buying tickets and such. I talked a bunch about this before you joined. So I won't say too much because I spent like probably almost 10 minutes, too much time on it right in the beginning of the show. But I'll just say this. A lot of Niner fans live in LA. There are a ton of Niner fans here in LA. So I don't know if you live here in LA or you're a distant Rams fan, but anyone that lives here, it's unfortunate, but we know there's a lot of Niner fans here. I know, I didn't say this earlier. I personally know Niner fans that are Rams season ticket holders. They own season tickets to the Rams because they sell the other 7, make a crap ton of money, and then just keep the one game to go to the Rams-Niner game. That happens. So I don't think it's necessarily, well, I mean, it is obviously Niner fans buying tickets, but I don't think it's not an issue with Rams fans not buying them. I think it's just the way LA is, the demographics, with how many brokers have tickets. There's a lot of brokers that own season tickets, and then they just sell them out third party wise to anyone at the highest bidder. So it's obviously an issue because you don't want your home team to be the away team, especially for a playoff game. But unfortunately, it's a, how do I say this? It's an issue, but the way it's being talked about, the narrative that is being pushed nationally is just not correct. It's not because there's not a big fan base, not because Rams fans don't want to buy tickets. It's a more so that there are a lot of Niner fans in LA already. B, there are a lot of Niner fans that are actually season ticket holders. I don't know the number, but just the fact that I know a few that are doing that, there are many more. And C, there's a lot of ticket brokers that have bought a ton of tickets. They've bought, the PSLs at SoFi because then they can buy other events and make money on those. So you have your big party ticket brokers, but you have small ones too. I mean, these could be even just individuals that buy up 4 season tickets and they just sell them all year and make money. Oh yeah, it's happening in Vegas this year with the Raiders. Like this is not. It seems new because it's LA and it doesn't happen everywhere else. But now that Vegas has had that happening, I think little by little people will start realizing like, okay, that's just the way it's going to be in these big entertainment markets. But it's unfortunate. I think Rams fans are going to show out. I said too, anyone that wants tickets, our ticket provider is TickPick. Use tickpick.com/LAFB. There's no fees, but also we know a ton of people on Twitter that are just connecting Rams fans that are selling tickets, making sure they get in the hands to other Rams fans. So anyone needs any, hit me up on Twitter at Ryan Dyrud LAFB. I'll make sure to point you in the right direction because I know a bunch of people on there that are just helping people connect, just saying, hey, like, because if you don't know anyone that wants to buy them, you're just going to obviously put them up on StubHub or Ticketmaster, and then anyone has fair game and, might be a Niner fan willing to pay a lot of money for them. So that's the way it is. Let's get a few more questions in here. If in the offseason, do you see the Rams drafting O-line given they didn't draft any last year? Great question. I won't get into it much because we'll talk way more during the offseason. I do, just because you have Andrew Whitworth potentially retiring. Joe Noteboom is a free agent. You still need to add more depth there. I think Brian Allen played very well, but you can potentially upgrade the position or at least add competition there. We don't know exactly what they'll do at the guard spots, if they're going to extend David Edwards eventually or whatnot. So, yeah, I think they will. I mean, they don't have many picks, so we'll see. It also depends on free agency too. Like if they want to go out and get some guys on the cheap in free agency, that might be a better way for them just because of the lack of draft picks and not having to rely on having a guy fall in the draft. But we'll get into a ton of that all off season long. So here we go. Yeah. Thanks for the info. Makes sense. Yeah, I'm a lifelong fan, East Coast, New Jersey. Okay. Oh, follow the Rams brothers. I was going to say my Dean from the Rams brothers out in New Jersey. So I don't know if you know him or just follow him, but yeah, he's East Coast, and then Nick is out here on the West Coast in LA. So great. Yeah, it's super pumped there on the LA Football Network. So thanks for checking them out. Thanks for checking my show out. But yeah, if you want a little more, I go way deeper into that topic. Preserve, if I'm saying that right, perverse. Check it out just earlier in the show after this is done, and you'll get 15 minutes of me rambling about this whole ticket issue. So but thanks guys. Appreciate all the questions. I'm going to jump into some a little Chargers talk and then a little UCLA and USC talk before I wrap up the show. So obviously feel free to hang out. I'd love to have you stick around, but yeah, we'll move on now to the next topic at hand. Because I haven't talked much Chargers. Obviously, Rams are in the playoffs, so that's going to be dominated by them because they're the team still going. But this is an LA football show, so we want to at least try to hit all the teams as much as possible. And the Chargers, I would just want to briefly touch on some in-house free agents that we will obviously get very much into throughout the offseason as soon as Super Bowl ends and dive a lot deeper and look at some actual, what the cap space is, look at what market value is. It will obviously get into other free agents around the league that the Chargers can potentially target. But in terms of just in-house, I want to at least put out there the ones that I think are most important for Tom Telesco, Brandon Staley, and company to retain. Because they have 29 free agents. So they have $70 million in cap, but 29 free agents and some big-time ones. And, some teams are all about keeping as much as their homegrown talent as possible. Other teams are about, keeping a few top tier guys and the rest, they just kind of, you just regurgitate, right? You just kind of rinse and recycle. And the Chargers, I feel historically have not really paid premium for their homegrown. And obviously for their stars, LT, Phillip Rivers, obviously they're going to do it for them. But, you see guys like Adrian Phillips, Hunter Henry, I could go much, much down the list. These like kind of mid-tier, they're not necessarily star, but they're good players, but they don't quite pay that higher price value to keep them around. So this year, though, I do think there are a few guys they really need to make sure whatever the cost is, they keep around. And so let me get into that right now. First one I'll talk about, Uchenna Nwosu, former USC product. He's, LA baby through and through. Uchenna Nwosu had a great season. He seemed to just be getting into really dominant fashion by the end of the year. Like he was good all year, but it's like as the year went on, as he learned the system more, felt more comfortable, he just got better and better and better and better. In that Raider game, he was the best defensive player on the field. I would say even better than Derwin James that game. And so Uchenna is a guy that I think they have to lock in. Once you find a quality edge player, you don't let them just walk. And, he's a guy, another guy we'll talk about, I know is probably the one that everyone talks about getting the franchise tag, but I wouldn't be shocked if they end up giving it to Uchenna if they can't come to a contract deal. I just think he's that important to this defense. And in this Staley system, edge pressure is very key. I mean, you want obviously pressure from everywhere, but having solid edge. I mean, you look at all of his defenses in his tenure, some of the best edge performances in football, right? With the Bears, Khalil Mack, Leonard Floyd. With the Broncos, Von Miller, Bradley Chubb. With the Rams, Leonard Floyd. Aaron Donald is pseudo edge. He's a D tackle, but 3 tech. and what else? Who else they were able to allocate out on the outside? Terrell Lewis, who they drafted, and different guys able to get involved there. Now you come to the Chargers. You got Joey Bosa, Uchenna Nwosu, and you need two. As good as Joey Bosa is, you need two. So Uchenna Nwosu is a guy I think is a slam dunk. I think he's a tag target if they can't get a deal done. Hopefully they do. And I think, I'm not saying I would do a hometown discount, but obviously he wants to stay. He's a hometown guy, USC product. It's been with the Chargers his whole career, drafted him in the second round. So I think that's a deal that hopefully they can get done. Second one that I want to see happen, I'm not sure if it will though, is Kaiser White. Kaiser White had such a good year, breakout year, crazy numbers, what he put up. He was really the only consistent inside backer. Drue Tranquill, I thought, played well, but he was just inconsistently healthy. So he'd play well, get hurt, miss some time, come back, have to kind of get his bearings again, play well again. So, and Drue, I think, is obviously a very big, important part of this defense moving forward. But Kaiser White was he was the man, which no one expected much going into training camp. And he just kind of blew everyone away. Kenneth Murray, everyone knows how up and down his season was. All the talent in the world, just can't seem to put it together. And, to his credit or discredit, however you want to say it, but I don't think it helped having him start in the middle, then move to the edge, then go back to the middle. Kaiser White is a guy that I would love to see them bring out because A, the consistency, B, his actual talent and skill-wise. Like he's got kind of the body and frame of a safety, but he's got like the size of a safety, but the power, the prowess of a linebacker. And he played safety in college, so that makes a lot of sense. But I just don't know if he's a guy they'll shell out money for. And after the year he had, again, I'll dive more later on into true contract values because I haven't had time to really look into that. But I would assume he'd garner double digits somewhere. Like someone's gonna, I'm not gonna say overpay, but we saw Corey Littleton get a $11 million contract, 11 per year with the Raiders after his, couple good seasons with the Rams there. And so I know this is kind of his first real good year, but it was that good where I could see a team giving that. And I don't know if the Chargers, and this isn't the Chargers. Because I think a lot of people say, oh, coupon Tom or Dean Spanos doesn't want to pay up or whatever. This is, I think, more about this defensive system. And I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I think it's not that the linebacker position is undervalued, but it's that you can extrapolate talent from guys without overpaying at that position because it's so important. The interior defensive line, the edge, and the secondary is way more important than the middle linebacker, if that makes sense. Obviously, you have to have very smart, great tackling middle linebackers. If you look through the years of this system with Brandon Staley, where he's been, there hasn't always been, not there's outliers, of course, but there hasn't always been the paying the premium for middle linebackers. But he's always had good middle linebackers, and so I don't know. I hope they do. It's just, is the money going to run out? Is there enough to bring back? Because I think the next guy I'll get to, in my opinion, is more important to bring back, and that's Justin Jones. Justin Jones' biggest concern for me is his health. Didn't have a fully healthy year this year, but it was obvious how good he was when he was healthy. Somewhere to the tune of, rush yards per game when he was on the field was around 3.5 yards a carry. When he was off the field was around 5.5. Full 2 yards per carry more when Justin Jones was out of the lineup. So I still think the draft is somewhere where the Chargers need to address interior defensive line as well. Adding depth there. And, if they have, I haven't even looked at mocks yet. I haven't had time, but, who's sitting there at 17, we'll see. But you can't let a guy like Justin Jones walk. And I don't think they'll have to spend like a crazy amount of money for it, but to me, he would be priority number 2 after Eugene Nwosu. And I love Kaiser White, and I hope they bring him back, but I just think, I said many times all year, in my opinion, the most important player on the Chargers defense, not named Derwin James, is Justin Jones, because of that stat I just shared, how important he was in the run defense. And when he was out, the run defense imploded. And that was with Kaiser White, who had a great season. You have to have mauling defensive tackles in this scheme. Have to. You see the Broncos with Vic Fangio, Draymond Jones, Shelby Harris. Fantastic. The Rams, obviously Aaron Donald. But last year had Michael Brockers, Morgan Fox. This year, Sebastian Joseph Day, Ashton Robinson, Greg Gaines. You have to have really good D tackles on the nose and the 3-tech. And I think Justin Jones proved that if he can stay healthy, he is that premier talent in his system. So I think he will be re-signed. And then it starts coming, okay, if you get Uchenna, who may go for anywhere from 10 to 13 million a year, what's Jones going to cost you? You know, Morgan Fox, I think, got 6 last year after leaving the Rams, and he was a role player on the Rams, so Jones could get in the 8 to 10 range. And then it's like, okay, then how much is left over for guys like Kaiser White? So we'll see. Other 2 no-brainers, like must-sign backs that aren't going to cost you a fortune. Dustin Hopkins, kicker. You finally have consistency at kicker. I don't need to talk a lot about it. Like, he had a great year. As soon as Washington released him, he joined the Charger squad. He was fantastic. So you need to not ask any questions. Just get it done. There needs to be no more kicking competitions for this Chargers team. Dustin Hopkins needs to be the guy. Get him signed in long term. That's a no-brainer. Andre Roberts also. Soon as he joined this team, the special teams unit like flipped. And I know he's a return man. I talked about this yesterday with the Rams, with Brandon Powell. It's amazing how different a special teams unit overall looks when you have a dynamic return guy. It's similar to, like, I talk about coaching sometimes, how there's some elite coaches and a lot of the head coaches are good. But when you have a star quarterback, it makes that good quarterback look great. A star returner can make a special teams unit look great. And when you don't have one, all those flaws come out. So Andre Roberts, when he joined this team, just totally changed the identity of this special teams unit. Now, we all know they fired their special teams coordinator just recently. Haven't hired the new one yet. So we'll see if they wait. I mean, I would assume they'll hire one here before free agency starts. So obviously then that'll be a conversation. If they want to bring, he'll have say, and I'm sure bringing Roberts back. But to me, that's a no-brainer. So Hopkins and Roberts are your no-brainers. Get it done. Uchenna is a no-brainer. I think it will happen. I think Justin Jones will happen. And Kaiser White's one that I want to happen. But we'll see if they want to allocate money to that middle linebacker position, or they want to just roll it back with Drew Tranquill. Hope Kenneth Murray develops with another offseason in this system, and then add some depth in, some cheap free agent veterans and the draft. 11 picks in the draft. But I hope Kaiser White is here to stay. So that'll be an interesting conversation. The last 2 I got to mention, again, these are wish list ones. Oday Abushi. I liked Oday. Thought he played great in his signed a 1-year deal. I thought it was a steal of a deal when they signed him. And, he played really, really well at that right guard position. Unfortunately, he got hurt, obviously, and missed the rest of the year. But I think if you can get him back, he signed for like $1.25 million. So it wasn't like crazy money. So I think it's well worth it getting him back. He knows he knows the offense now. I know he didn't play in it all year, but he was obviously learned it before he got injured. So he knows the guys there that he plays with. He knows the quarterback. He knows the schemes. And you'll be able to get him back for that cheap value. So Oday Abushi's one. And the last one I got to talk about is Mike Williams. Obviously, that's the big one that everyone's talking about. Everyone's probably like, what? You're not bringing up the most talked about one? And Mike Williams it's going to be an interesting free agency because it'll be really interesting to see what his value is on the open market. Do I want him back on the Chargers? 1,000%. I think what he brings to this offense is undeniable. If you watch the series called All In about the Chargers, and there's the episode dedicated to him and Keenan Allen, you can see the dynamic that the two of them have, the friendship they have, the belief they have, the unselfishness that they have, which is rare in the NFL. One of very few number 2 receivers to finish over 1,000 yards. He finished 23rd among all receivers in PFF ranking, right above Keenan Allen, actually. Improved as a route runner. Overall, very good season. Had some critical drops, unfortunately. Disappeared some games. Just wasn't there. But this is definitely a guy you want back. The question is for how much. Played on the tag this year at about 15, or on the option, excuse me. He was on his 5th-year option, which is about $15 million. This is another, if they get a deal done with Uchenna, I would think this will be a tag candidate if they don't get a long-term deal done. I don't think they let him walk. But they're not, I cannot see them paying him in that 19, 20, 21 million per year range, which he may want, which he may be asking. Which will be surprising because he's as good as he is and as how valuable he's never had that Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones type year, which is what you need to get that over 20 million threshold. So, I mean, if they can get him long-term at 15 per, done deal. Get it done. 16, 17 per, I'm probably still okay with it. Once you get to 18, then it's like, I don't know. So, and again, there's, guys in the draft. It's a good receiver class again, free agency. There's some good receivers on the free agent market. Obviously, everyone wants to talk about Devontae Adams, which who knows what his future holds. If if Rodgers ends up leaving, they're millions over the cap space. So they're going to be really, Packers might be in rebuild. I mean, if Rodgers goes, they're in for sure rebuild. And Adams, I doubt is going to want to be there for that. So that could be, but he's going to be wanting more money than Mike Williams. But you might be more willing to pay him than Mike Williams. So it's a huge thing. So Mike, I want back for sure. It's just going to go into money. So we'll talk a lot more about market value and what that looks like. But those are the guys the Chargers, I think, need to really bring back. So the no-brainer ones I said, and then the other 3 that are luxuries that I hope they can get done. All right. Let's finish the show up with a little UCLA USC talk because it's still getting transfers. It's crazy. Here we are in January, and we still got USC and UCLA news. I'll quickly go over them. UCLA, Titus Makeo Adimalala. I said that right? 6'1", 170 receiver, transfer from UCF. 4-star product. And a guy that, true freshman last year. I think he had like 120 yards. So nothing crazy, but, as a true freshman, you're not getting a ton of playing time. But he has a good skill set. Like I said, 4-star recruit out of Hawaii. Not university, but comes from Hawaii in high school. And, he can maybe fill that Kyle Phillips role that they lost as Kyle Phillips is going to the draft. So a fluid guy, tall, little lanky, probably get some more meat on him. But good hands, and a guy that will just, give DTR another target and is a guy that they're going to need because, they lost Chase Cota too, who entered the transfer portal. So you have some speed guys and, Cam Brown and Casimir Allen, and then you add this as a good possession receiver that I think will fill that Kyle Phillips role. So that's a good transfer for them. So the biggest thing with UCLA right now is who are they going to get at DC, at defensive coordinator? I would assume that spot's going to be filled fairly soon. Gary Patterson, who we talked about in the Bruin Bible recently. If you haven't checked out that pod, great, our Bruins podcast by Will Decker. But I was on there. We talked about Gary Patterson potentially, but he just officially was hired by Texas as like a consultant. So I think Jimmy Lake is still it's the big fish name, obviously, and a slam dunk if they can make that happen. But we'll see. I'm assuming it's gonna be a deal here soon because they're filling out their coaching staff more. They've added a tight ends coach now from Duke. They've added their offensive line coach. They've added some defensive position coaches. So now they're really just missing that DC that's really going to pull everything together and allow them to continue hitting that transfer portal for defensive players now, because that's the unit that really needs it. And if UCLA gets a top 50 defense, that's a tough team to beat. It's a really good football team with that offense. After winning 8 wins, they could be pushing 9 or 10. USC, 3 big transfers I'll get into quick. Travis Dye from Oregon, running back, local kid, went to Norco High School, finished last year with 1,200 rushing yards, 400 receiving yards, 18 total touchdowns. He joined. It's like the USC Trojans had no running backs because of transfers or going to the draft or graduating. And now they have 3 phenomenal running backs. We're putting an article up on LAFB Network probably tonight or tomorrow about the running back room that really dives into who is who and what it is. And you might be one of the best running back room in college football. For sure, probably the Pac-12. And now you get Travis Dye, who, torched these teams, torched UCLA for 4 touchdowns this year. And you get him now as that kind of change of pace, fun tailback. That's a big transfer. So, and then 2 defensive linebackers, Ramella Height, 6'5", 215 backer out of Auburn, former 3-star, and Shane Lee, 6 foot 243 backer from Alabama, former 4-star. So starting to stack up that defense. And tell you what, man, what Lincoln Riley has done in the month he's been in LA, we thought, okay, this year, 1 year of rebuilding, still probably going to be pushing for a bowl game. And then year 2 is when they really make a run. They make a run this first year. Now, the thing is about quarterback, which we're still waiting on a decision from Caleb Williams. I'm shocked he still hasn't made one. But if Caleb Williams commits to USC, then they, I think, could really make a run in his first year. Now, if Caleb Williams doesn't, then we don't even know who's going to play quarterback. You have Miller Moss is like the only quarterback on the roster. So, but I think I heard last that it's down to USC and LSU. And he spent a lot of time in LA. I think it's going to be USC. We're just waiting on the decision. So once that happens, we'll obviously let you know. But if it's USC and Caleb Williams is here, then I think this USC team contends right off the bat. They'll be a very young team, but they have that want to bring this program back to dominance. And there's enough arrogance and cockiness that if you can do that with freshmen and sophomores, damn, that's exciting. That's exciting. So we'll see. But a lot of stuff going on with these 2 programs, and we'll fill you in as soon as we know about Caleb Williams, as soon as we know about the UCLA defensive coordinator position. But we'll have plenty more all week long about this Rams-Niners matchup, because obviously I didn't get into that matchup yet. But that's what we're going to be talking about Wednesday at 5, Friday at 5. Got some guests already lined up for those. Hopefully going to get some former players on as well. So it's Niners week, baby. 3rd time is a charm. Let's get it done. tickpick.com/LAFB if you need tickets, or hit me up on Twitter at Ryan Dyrud LFB. Make sure to point you in the right direction. Let's make sure we pack SoFi, get this W, get to the Super Bowl, which is back at SoFi here in LA. We're going to be on Radio Row, the LA Football Network on Radio Row. Super pumped. So stay with us all week that week, as well as we're going to be just doing tons of interviews, hanging out with Golden Road. We're having a beer tower. It's going to be freaking phenomenal. I can't wait. I love what we're doing here in LA. So thank you all for tuning in. This is the LA Football Show. I'm Ryan Dyrud. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Talk to you guys all on Wednesday.